What's up, everybody? Welcome to season 2 of Heroically. Now, you may be telling yourself, it's a little bit different. I can see his face. He's magically somewhere behind him. I know I snapped right there, but I'm not. I'm going to have the background probably already set up. My name is Riakeem, and if you're watching this video, you are back for season 2, the season 2 premiere of my podcast, Heroically. Now, I know that a podcast is kind of like a radio show, right? A lot of the podcasts that I listen to, or to which I listen, they have video components, and I wanted to do something bigger and grander in 2020, new year, same me. But with backgrounds and on video now. So this makes it a little bit more personable. You can see me emote when I speak. You can see my grandiose hand gestures. And maybe I could bring a little bit more humor to it with the visual component. But yeah, we're in 2020, you guys, and I took a little bit of a break from the podcast. I took a little bit of a break as I finished my book. I was in a class, and then, of course, December brought the holiday season. Few things to note, because this is the season premiere, it probably won't be anything too grandiose. I'm still kind of getting used to the setup in this space. I have some experience with green screen and recording on the camera before. I have a few YouTube videos up, or I did movie reviews and that kind of thing. And in 2020, I really plan to get back into it. Starting now with my little Logitech HD 1080p webcam and my little blue snowball with no pop filter, and I just some sort of jury rigging of this light that is way too bright for me to actually see anything that I'm doing. It's like if you've ever been in theater and you're on stage and the light is like really bright shining down on your face. It's the spotlight. It's the spotlight. But yeah, we're back, and we're back with the visual component. But yeah, this episode is going to be very laid back. I'm just going to kind of talk about my goals for 2020, what I want the podcast to be, how I'm going to grow my YouTube channel, and my blog, and my Instagram, and my Snapchat, and my Vine. Fine, they still do that. My Tumblr, I'm going to be out there tumbling. I'm going to be tumbling. Probably already said Snapchat. What's the one that all the kids are doing? The talking tick, that one I'm gonna be talking and ticking. Yeet. No cap. Yes, but we're back. We're back in 2020. So this episode, I'm gonna talk about why I took a little bit of a break from the podcast, and the main thing was in November I did NaNoWriMo, and I finished the book that I started in November and brought that all the way to the end. There's going to be, I'm not going to talk about too much about the book in this episode, but I'll talk about my experiences with writing. I figure, I'll go back a little bit in time to kind of talk about why I started writing, why I want to be a writer, why I moved to New York to pursue writing, and some of the stuff that I've done to accomplish that goal so far, and why 2020 is going to be an even stronger year for me accomplishing that goal. So that's the plan for this episode. One more thing about this video, as I get used to the video format, as it will still be a podcast, you might also notice that I'm not on Anchor anymore. I'm not using the Anchor app. Anchor automatically took the podcast as I recorded it and put it on all the platforms. So I'm going to work on downloading all of season 1 and archiving it. It's still on Spotify. You still have access to it, 25 to 30 hours of content out there. But moving forward, the main place for this podcast will be YouTube, starting off. And then eventually I'm going to take the audio from the YouTube videos and try to get that myself on Spotify and Google Podcasts and iTunes or whatever. But I still have a lot to learn about that. And my phone died. I'm using my phone right here as my little scripty script. Yeah, so the goals for how do I want to start this? This is gonna be really late, casual, by the way, really laid back, really casual. Especially this first episode back. We're not gonna get into some of the nitty gritty superhero heroic topics just yet. And there's a lot to talk about. There is a lot to talk about. I'll give a little snapshot of some of the stuff I'm interested in talking about before I really get into the episode proper. I'm going to, in the coming weeks, be talking about The Mandalorian, my experiences with Disney Plus. The Witcher series came out on Netflix, which was pretty good. Now you get to see me pick the little fuzzies off my tongue. I'm not cutting any of that. It's all going to go in there. They're landing. I had to clean my desk off. And I'll explain that a little bit later. What else? There's some stuff I'm behind on that I really want to catch up on. What's the show that the Golden Compass? What's it called? His Dark Materials is out on HBO, as well as Watchmen, which if you remember when I first started the podcast, maybe not when I first started, but a couple weeks into it, I love Watchmen now, and I really would like to talk about that show. Compared to the movies, I need to actually read the Watchmen comic book, which I still have not done. I think my friend Andrew has it, so I need to get that back from him. Andrew, if you're watching this, give me my comic book back, man. I need to read it myself. I think he has it. So yeah, that's kind of what I want to talk. That's what's kind of coming down the pipeline. A few movies that I've seen. I had this whole schedule that I made at the end of the year, but because I focused on writing my book, that never really, never really got put out there. I never really did the schedule. It got put out there, but I never really did the schedule. So yeah. I am realizing, because I'm not on Anchor, and I don't have any sponsors or anything like that right now, this is normally where I would take my first break. I would do the really long opening, and then I would get some water, and I would kind of come back into it, and then that's kind of how I organized it. So I realized I have to break myself from introductory mode. I'm also drinking water on camera. Gotta stay hydrated, people. Just keep it right here in a bottle. So it's so strange that you can see me. One thing that never happened that I said was I was gonna be trying to work on, but I never actually accomplished this, was getting a, what do you call those things? A jingle or a sort of sound for the podcast. I'm still using like the royalty-free stuff, but maybe 2020 is the year where I actually start working on that. Baby steps, you know. I don't get paid to do this, people. It's just fun things that I like to do. All right, so first things first. I'm the realist. No, first things first. It's 2020. People make New Year's resolutions in 2020. And I don't necessarily want to make any resolutions this year. I'm not really going into 2020 with the idea that I don't like some things that I've been doing and I want to change those things that I've been doing. My perspective on 2020, the year of perfect vision, my perspective on 2020 is that I want to set some achievable, actionable goals. I want to say right now it's January 5th as I'm recording this. It's January 5th. It's the Sunday, the first Sunday of the new year. This week will be the first full week of the new year. I want to say by the end of 2020, these are the things that I have done. Here's why I have done them. And here is why it's important for me to have done them and those things like that. To put a little bit more framework on that energy, 2020 is the first year of this next decade. I was reading a tweet that said there are those that think the decade is from 2021 to or something like that, and there are those that are correct. So we're definitely at the start of a new decade. But I am 29. I'm 29. And this is the last year, not even a full year. I got 11 months left. Actually, I have less than 11 months now. I have 10 months and some change left in my 20s. So I don't want to get to the age of 30 and feeling like I have wasted so much time. And I already am very comfortable and happy with my accomplishments in my life, but I got this one last year of my 20s to kickstart my 30s and make my 30s the best decade of my life. That is until I get to my 40s, and then the 40s are going to be the best decade of my life. Then the 50s are probably going to be the best decade of my life. Then the 60s are going to be an even better decade. I want the decades to get incrementally better as they go on. Did I use that word correctly? I don't know. Let me know. Neither here nor there. But 2020, first year of the new decade, last year of my 20s, it's time to get stuff done. So we'll start from the beginning, and I'll tell you why writing is my passion, why it's what I want to do. Also, building the podcast to help kind of cement that. And as I kind of go through it, I'll explain why my goals for 2020 are and what they are. And, as I get to the end, I might interweave some here and there, but it is what it is. We're at 10-minute marks, and we're doing good. Um, so, when I was in elementary and middle school, I never really knew that I didn't have like a tangible thing that I wanted to be a writer. It wasn't something that I said to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to become a writer. That didn't actually happen to me until I was in the 9th grade. My mom had just got a divorce, and I moved to Covington, Georgia, beautiful rural Covington, Georgia, where there's not much to do but go look at cows and maybe see a movie on the weekends. Probably explains why I like movies so much, but I like movies even before moving to Covington. But I didn't know at this point where I wanted to be. It was my 9th grade year. I had to make a whole bunch of new friends, meet a whole bunch of new people. We didn't really have internet like that. Not because the internet wasn't a thing, but because the internet, we were just broke. We didn't really. I got stole it from the neighbors. We were just kind of getting out of dial-up. We still had that a little bit, and when we did have internet, it was very slow and wonky. Like I was still using floppy disks in high school, not because I'm that old, but because we were just a little bit behind technological wise. It's funny to think that, like, there was a time in my 10th grade year where I would bring a floppy disk to school and none of the computers in the school could download my paper, and I eventually had to get a flash drive. I remember when flash drives used to be insanely expensive, and I had to buy like that 1 GB flash drive to hold my papers, and I had to hang on to that thing for dear life. Had to buy it, and so I moved to this new school, Newton High School in Covington, Georgia. The school no longer is there now. It got they built it and put it in a new location. That's a different story. 10 years ago, last year just had our 10-year anniversary. I did not go. I was in the planning committee for like a few months, but nah, I'm so tangential. Now that you can see me, it's even odder. You can see like my gears turning. So we move over to Newton County. I meet all these new people, and I was in the NAP literature class. Maybe it wasn't AP. I don't remember. No, it wasn't AP, but I don't know if it was advanced yet because I just moved over and I was in the magnet program in my middle school. It's basically a program where they take the hoity-toity smart-ass kids and move them into rooms with all the hoity-toity smart-ass kids and say, you guys are smarter than the other kids. We're going to give you guys special treatment and special education stuff. And I was like, oh, there's another story about that. Actually, I kind of talked about that in my episode, my Father's Day special last year, so check that out. So I moved to this new school and I'm in my literature class. And for homework, we had to write a poem, just a little simple poem. I think we could write anything we wanted to, and we just had to write a poem. There was a Georgia writing contest or something at the time. I really should have remembered more about this, and I wish I held on to that. I just remember it all kind of fuzzily. And my teacher, Lori McGovern, was my English teacher at the time. I think she's now a librarian, but we're friends on Facebook, but I don't really know what she's up to these days. But thank you, Lori McGovern, if you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast. You're probably the reason why, you're one of the reasons why I'm interested in doing what I want to do. So I wrote this poem for homework, turned it in. The thing was, we got to share our poem in front of the whole class. And only one person's poem was going to be submitted to this Georgia level or the school wide, and then it competed at a Georgia wide writing contest or something like that. And we had to vote as a class on which one we wanted to submit from our class. My poem was not selected by the class. Cue sound effects. No sound effects yet. Maybe I'll add that stuff in. I'll get a little soundboard. But Miss McGovern came up to me after class and said, hey, I think your poem was really good. I think it was phenomenal. I really liked it. And although you didn't win the little thing that we did for the class, I think you should submit that poem regardless. And I said, if you think it's good, I really like the poem, but I was like, the class didn't like it. The class didn't like it. It is what it is. Bada bing. So I submitted it, and I ended up winning. And I won the Georgia level. This was 2005, 2006. I don't remember. I don't remember the name of the writing contest either. So there's really no credibility to the story. But I won it. Damn it, I won it. I didn't get like a trophy or anything, and I don't even remember what happened after that. But I won that contest, and I remember thinking, there's something to this. I enjoyed the writing process. I enjoyed the feeling tremendously. I enjoyed the feeling that I got when people read my work or heard me recite my work, and they loved it, and they were like, "Oh, this poem is so good. You can actually do something with this poem. I'd pay money to hear this poem." Ding, 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 ding. Light bulbs. So I've started my writing career. At least once I said, "Hey, I want to be a writer." I started my writing career with poetry. I wrote a lot of poetry. I submitted poems to my high school newspaper. It had little poems in that we would post, and it would be in the Rampage was the newspaper. I really loved that because we were the Newton High School Rams, and we had a Rampage. It's so freaking clever. Um, so I would submit my poems to that. I had crushes on girls, and I would write poems about them because, growing up, that was I wasn't the jock, I wasn't the athlete, I was the fat romantic, I was the gentle giant. I was always that kid that was never in a relationship ever, but all of my friends would ask me relationship advice. What the hell is up with that? Why are you coming to me for advice? I was probably, so many girls probably thought I was creepy. That's neither here nor there. I'm happily married now. But I wrote all these poems for all these girls that I liked, and I would submit them to the newspaper, and they would get published, and everyone would be like, "Oh my God, you wrote this poem about that girl." And I was like, "No, I didn't." All lies. I totally did. But I would lie about it. So I got a taste for writing. I got a taste for what it was like for people to read my writing. Um, Backing up a little bit, even before I knew that writing was like a thing, I was always into like nerd things, Pokemon, Power Rangers, the Ninja Turtles, what movies, the X-Men, Spider-Man. I was a typical 90s kid that liked typical 90s kid things. But unlike typical 90s kids, I always had a fascination with analyzing and breaking down the story structure. So much so that I would create these sets around my room with the toys. I would have different, and I would call them sets. I would have the head of my bed was one scene, the floorboard was one scene, there was a scene in my closet, and when I would play with my toys, I would have a protagonist toy, I would have a villain toy, I would have the miscellaneous characters, the allies, the enemies, the mentor figure. Before I knew what any of these terms were, this is how I played with my toys. And for me, being done playing with my toys was me completing a story. So I would have like Bart Simpson toy or whatever, and Bart Simpson was the hero of this particular episode. And I'll give a traditional one. Let's say I had a girl action figure that was kidnapped by a villain Furby. Then Bart Simpson would go on this adventure around my bedroom where he learned the tools to defeat the final villain, and he would rescue whatever toy. But I did this all the time with my Legos. I had these little pirate figures, the toy soldiers. It was my room was pretty much a toy mess. It was monstrous in there. Another thing I would do in terms of storytelling and crafting stories at an early age was that I would do these like little stick figure comics, and I would make my mom read them. I know she got annoyed. But she would, so I would take some graph paper or some Xerox paper. This is back when Xerox paper used to come in this big box, and it was like one long sheet of paper as you pulled it up, and it had these little circles on the side of it that you would have to tear, almost like this old-fashioned fax paper. And my mom would get leftover paper from wherever she was working at the time. I don't remember where. It might have been Emory. Sorry, Emory, she stole your paper, baby. But she would bring home these big boxes of this old-fashioned Xerox paper, and I would take them out, and I would roll them down my bed like one long film screen. You can't see my arms are off camera. I'm on camera. I keep forgetting. Oh, shit. Um, I would take the paper and I would roll it out, and I would sketch my own little comic book, my stick figure comic books. They were never like I didn't really have individual characters that I would create, not usually, but I would do things like I was a Pokemon trainer, and I would have my own little adventures where if I was a Pokemon trainer in the Pokemon world, this is the stuff that I would catch. And I would do little stick figure drawings of that. I did Power Rangers a lot because Power Rangers is just one crayon per ranger. The red crayon was the Red Ranger, the yellow crayon was the Yellow Ranger, the blue crayon was the Blue Ranger, and I had 5 different colors for the 5 different Rangers. And I would do these stick figure comic books with the Power Rangers, and I would tell stories where the Power Rangers had to face the monsters. I pretty much analyzed as a young kid the formula of Power Rangers. That's kind of when I first started kind of breaking down cinema and storytelling. Because if you don't know this, every episode of Power Rangers is the exact same. The teenagers are teenaging, and they have a problem that's the B plot that they kind of have to handle. Let's say Tommy's feeling sad because, not Tommy, let's say Zach's feeling sad because he has a dance competition that he wants to compete in. And then Rita, the villain at the time, would be like, Tom or Zach has a dance competition. I'm gonna make a dancing monster that's gonna break dance and destroy Angel Grove. So you have the B plot, which influenced the A plot, which was the monster the Power Rangers would fight. Rita would send that monster down. That monster would do some shenanigans. It would have some shenanigans with that particular Power Ranger that was the focus of the episode. In this case, it would be Zach. He would have the dance-off fight, and then they would all morph. Then they would fight the monster. Rita would make the monster big. They would defeat the monster by calling on the Megazords. Zordon would be like, Rangers, good job! Then, boom. Episode done. Wash, rinse, repeat. It had the typical 3-act structure, beginning, middle, end. And by doing this, I'm teaching myself 3-act structure and storytelling so that when I would watch other things like the Ninja Turtles and X-Men and even some more like adult things that I would watch with my sister, maybe not necessarily adult things, but more like story-driven, that are actually story-driven stuff, like episodes of the Rugrats or other kid shows that I would watch, I would not really like things that were necessarily not story-driven. So I say all that to say, with give you really tangential context to me being in 9th grade, realizing I could do writing for a living. Look at all my experiences. So I started with poetry. My writing poetry opened up doors for me to get into the school newspaper. So I have some sophomore year, I think I got into the school sometime like that. In the middle of my schooling in high school, I got into journalistic writing, and that's when I first started to kind of learn the technical aspect of writing. Crafting better sentences. Well, outside of like in class, right? Because Dr. Sheldon would, if she's watching this, she'd be like, "Hey, I taught you how to write." You know? But like Dr. Sheldon, Miss Sheldon, I don't know if she ever had a PhD. I don't remember. After college, everybody's doctor whatever now, you know. So I started learning things like commas before conjunctions and comma splicing. So now I have this passion for creative writing and storytelling, and I learned how to do that poetically through poetry and stylistically through journalism. So all my experiences are kind of leading up to my passion to write the next great American novel. But I haven't done that yet. And this is when I sort of get bogged down with the nitty-gritty details. I had this big idea of this book that I was going to write in high school. I won't tell you what I called it because I might still one day do it. But I had this grand idea. And I would basically, when not reading, when not playing video games or working, because I worked a lot in high school, I would use graph paper and draw little maps for this world. I would build my own religion for the world. I would do histories of characters. I wrote so many histories and unnecessary descriptions of landscapes, and like I could tell you like, oh, this was a port city, so they are the main place where people get their fish from and other port stuff. This place is like the power hub, and I did this for days and days and hours, but I never actually wrote that book. I did a lot of world building, never wrote the book. Fast forwarding a little bit, went to college, didn't write a book really for that whole 4 years. And I wouldn't even say really. I never read a book for the whole 4 years. And this is when I started to get into the idea of I was doing stuff for class, right? So instead of writing for what I wanted to do, I was writing for my creative writing courses. I was doing homework for other classes. I started to date. I had my first long-term girlfriend who is now my wife. So I never really took the time to actually write that book. Eventually, I got so far detached from all the world building, I grew uninterested in that story. And I learned in college other types of writing, right? So unfortunately, one of my biggest regrets in life is that in high school, I never did theater. If I can go back in time, I would totally be a theater kid. But I really wouldn't have had the time either because I had to work so much. So that's a big regret I have, is not being a theater kid. I'm watching these shows on Disney Plus right now where it's all these theater kids in their 30s and 40s and 50s going back to relive their days as theater kids. And I'm like, damn, I didn't even get to be a theater kid. I'm sad vicariously through their sadness of getting to go back and be theater kids. God. So I never got to be a theater kid. So one of these days I'm going to get involved in adult theater. I know it, like in a little community theater or something. But I'm tangential. So what was I even saying? All right. So in college I did that writing, right? I started writing for theater. I wrote a one-act play. I actually wrote my first screenplay, and this was probably the first time I finished a large project. I did an independent study with Matthew Kiesner, who was a film professor at Oxford College of Emory University at the time. This was when the shit was this? 2010, 2011? I don't remember when I took the class. But I wrote a play about my mother's upbringing. So I sat down, I interviewed a lot of people in my family, got their perspective, and I wrote this play called this screenplay called Texas Heat, where it talked about my mom who used to run track in high school, but she was not neat and pigeon-toed, so she had a lot of issues with running, and so she did track to overcome it. I had a very good time writing this story. Although if I were to write this story again today, it's probably going to have a different, much more depressing ending to that story, because I probably dip into some of her life today and use that as like a framing device to kind of go back in time, which would be cool. And I do want to rewrite this, and the reason I want to rewrite the screenplay is because it's lost. I lost it. I like the computer that it was on crashed. This is a college right? The printer that it was on crashed. My mom has a hard copy somewhere in the house. Cannot find it. One day it'll probably turn up. And if it ever does turn up, I'm probably going to take it, edit it now that I'm, much more mature of a storyteller. I can probably do a lot more work with it. I don't want to get bogged down on that. So I wrote that screenplay. I also learned in college that poetry isn't what I wanted to do. It's not the type of writer that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a storyteller. I wrote a lot of like scenes and short stories for class, and those are I was finally starting to get some projects done. I was finally starting to be able to feel like I could call myself a writer. Got my bachelor's degree, went straight to work, not writing, and then for a long part of my 20s, I just worked. I didn't really do a whole bunch of writing. I just worked, came home, played video games, went to work the next day, came home, played video games, hung out with my wife, worked, blah, 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 blah. You know the cycle. You get stuck in it. I didn't do anything creative. I started my blog in 2014 because I wanted to write. I was like, I need to write. It's what I want to do. It's what I need to do. It is when I feel the most fulfilled. So, wrapping it up a bit, I've already talked about on the podcast why my wife and I moved to New York, so I won't rehash that. Go back and listen to season 1, baby. It's out there, 30 hours of content. The episodes are titled in a way where you can find it. If you're truly interested, message me in the comments, because now there are comments, because this is on YouTube. Message in the comments and let me know, and I'll find the episode where I kind of talk more about that. But so now we're getting to the part where we're in New York. It's 2018. I got a job, and the year started off fairly well. I started off unemployed because I quit my job at Focus Camera because I hated it. I hated my job at Focus Camera. Absolutely hated it. So I quit in November of 2018. This was the summer after we moved up. So 2019 starts off. I'm unemployed. Grace is working. We both applied to school. The few months go by. I find out. No, I'm skipping part. I got a job as at a temp agency, and I found the job that I'm at now. Really like it. It's a good, stable job. It puts food on the table. It keeps a roof over the head. I'm not in love with the job. It's not where I want to be forever, but it's where I am right now, and I am content and I am happy to be there right now. Don't want to be there forever. Um, I'm hoping to be there for a few years at least. At the very least until I matriculate into graduate school, ideally, but we'll see what happens with that. And I'll get to that a little bit further on down the road. So the year is going by and I'm not writing again. I moved to New York. I'm falling into that same trap of not writing. I find, and one of the reasons what kind of deterred me a little bit, especially in the summer, that made me feel like really not writing was that I did not get into graduate school, because I applied at the end of 2018 and I found out, I forget, like February, March, or April, something around there, I didn't get in. I was really down about it. I felt really defeated. I felt like I wasn't good enough to do it. And that was a program for screenwriting, not the main writing that I want to do, but I want to do it. And I really like writing movies. Mainly all my writing that I love to do has to do with me telling stories because I want to tell stories. So I didn't get in. I was super sad. I don't want to say depressed because I don't necessarily, I don't want to diagnose myself with that, but I was really sad. I moved all the way the fuck up here to write and go to school, and I didn't get into school. So it's like, what do I do now? On top of that, my wife got into school, which is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be at the end of this episode. It might be early next week. It's already, it's 8:42. Jesus, Lord, I should record this early. Why do I do this to myself? But she got in and I didn't. So we couldn't necessarily move back to Atlanta. And I wouldn't necessarily have wanted to move back. There was some reasons that I would have gone back. But if she got in, none of those reasons are strong enough. So she's in school, so we're staying. And I want to support her. So I'm working, supporting her. But I'm falling in the trap, not writing. So I tell myself in 2019, I will not be defeated. I have this time while my wife is in school, she'll get her master's and she'll finish. And I'm going to do everything I can with the energy that I have. Because I'm still very lazy and I get tired all the time. And I still work. And I still clean and take care of the cats. I don't have kids yet, though. But I do want to pursue this thing. I need to write more. So I set my mind to it and I said, this year I'm going to do National Novel Writing Month. I'm going to write that 50,000 words. I'm going to finish something. And I did it. National Novel Writing Month came. I didn't do anything that month but work and write. I even pulled a couple sick days where I was kind of actually sick and I just wrote all the day. I just wrote. And November came and went, and at the end of the month, that very last day, I finished my NaNoWriMo project and it felt so good. It felt so good. It still feels good. It's like, I can't believe I wrote a damn book. I finally, after all this time, wrote a dang on book. And I'm so proud of it. It'll probably never see the light of day because it's really bad. Because I wrote it in a month, but just knowing, like, I finished a book in 1 month. I wrote 50,000 words, beginning, middle, end. You could read it right now, and it would make sense. It wouldn't. It's nowhere near publishable, but you could pull the story that I wrote out of it and understand the beginning, middle, and end. There's some scenes missing. Yeah, there's some scenes where I leave little notes like, "Oh, finish this thought here," here and there. But taking all that stuff out, taking out like the unnecessary words and chapters and stuff, it's 50,300 and some odd words. Feels good. I just want to revel in it all over again. So I finished that book. Another thing I did was I started to meet other writers. One of the things I wanted to do in the city is meet other writers to network. But I don't really go to a lot of events. I'm a terrible homebody, and I really have to break that. In 2020, first goal I'm going to talk about is breaking that energy. I want to go to more writing conferences and writing events, and spend more time meeting other writers. What I did in the end of 2019, I took three classes. Actually, I took 3 classes with Gotham Writers. 2 of them were online, so they didn't really help me in terms of meeting anything, but it was a personal passion of mine to learn this material. And I kind of got my foot in the door of learning to write for video games. So I took 2 writing for video game online courses through Gotham Writers, but the most important course that I took last semester was a 10-week writing for children's literature course. And it was a class with me to 10 and 15 other writers in the city who live here in the city, or who were in the city at the time. One of my colleagues is from another country. She was here on a student visa, actually, to take class. It was so cool. And we met writers. I met fellow writers that are passionate about doing what I'm doing. I now have buddies who are willing to help me revise my work. I'll help them revise their work. We have little writing groups now, which is fantastic. Step 1, find other writers in the city. I'm beginning to tick that box off. And my professor, my teacher of the course, Cody Keplinger, she's the writer. She's an author of this book called The Duff. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It stands for Drunk, Ugly, Fat Friend. She agreed to write me a letter of recommendation. So when I do finally apply to my master's program at the end of this year to matriculate in 2021, I've built that connection. And I love the people who wrote my letters of recommendation in the past. Dr. Skybell from Emory University, Dr. Adrian Ivey from Oxford College of Emory University, former supervisors that I've worked with. I've been out of college for so long now. I graduated Emory in 2013, and it is 2020. In May of this year, I will have been out of my undergraduate program for 7 years. So naturally, some of those connections have, the bridges are still built, of course. I don't burn bridges unless it was my Taco Bell bridge from junior year of high school. Fuck that place. Working there. Still love the food. But I need to meet more writers and people who can speak on where I am today and some of the stuff I've accomplished. So that's kind of the where I am now. Starting tomorrow, every Monday night I'm in another writing class. This is writing for fantasy and science fiction. I don't remember who the professor is, but he is a published science fiction and fantasy author. I'll talk more about, the books that he's wrote once I've read one of them. They're pretty popular, New York Times bestsellers, so, it's a guy who knows what he's talking about. It'll be a good person to know in the industry, networking, and then I'll meet the other people who are taking the class with me, some 10 to 15 other new students. So by the end of the next 10 weeks, I will have developed strong writing relationships, or medium energy writing relationships, with 2 whole classes of writers, because no one who's in my last class, I checked on the Discord, is taking this science fiction writing class with me. So this will be a whole new cohort of people, which I'm very excited about, meeting them and writing with them. So the first goal, continue to meet writers in the city. Continue to write. Starting this week, I'm going to start revising my book. It'll be the first time I actually do serious revisions for the novel that I've written. And last year, in 1 month, it took me 1 month to write 1 novel. This year, I'm giving myself the whole year to write 2. Inch by inch, anything's a cinch. If I can write 1 novel in 30 days, I can take 6 months and write 1 book and 6 months and write another. It really should be that easy. At the very least, I can write 100,000 words by the end of the year. And I think what I'm going to do because I really enjoyed the pressure of NaNoWriMo. I think what I'm going to do, my goal is going to be, and I changed this a little bit, but we'll see. I might reassess this at the end of the summer. But the first 6 months, I'm going to be working on 1 book, while also casually revising the book that I wrote. But I also might I might table the book that I wrote for NaNoWriMo. I might just not look at it for a year to come, and just really start writing more, because I know it's bad. And I almost don't want to look at it ever again. I just want to know that it's written, and then when I die, they uncover it, and then they give me my post-mortem roses. Oh, this was actually so fantastic. But I'll be dead, and I'll never know, and I'm okay with that. Because I want to write new stuff, and I don't want to get bogged down on working on that one thing when I have all this energy and time to be writing more. So I think I'm just going to start working on the next project. At the end of the summer, I'll reassess. I know for a fact I'm going to do NaNoWriMo again. I'm going to do it this year, and I think my goal, if I stay in good health, is to do National Novel Writing Month every month, or every November for the rest of my life. That is the goal. Even after I retire, I want to write a book every November for the rest of my life, or 50,000 words. Even if it's not a book, I want to write 50,000 words in the month of November, every month for the rest of my life. Hard goal, going to do it. I know that I can do it. Not only can I do that, last year in 2019, when I did it, I started over on like day 5 or 6. So I really did 50,000 words for this book in 25 days. And I took days off where I didn't write. So I did like 50,000 words in 20 days. In reality, that's really what it was. On that last day, it was the hardest day ever. It was the last day of November. It was that Saturday. I wrote 8,000 words in that one day. I got up at like 4 a.m. and I was like typing. I was typing. All those words I came up with on that day were garbage, but I was writing them. Not all. Some were good. I maybe got out of the 8,000, maybe 2,000 of those made for great writing. If I were to toot my own horn. And I would say out of 8,000 words written, 2,000 of them to be actually usable, I will take the hell out of that. So that's the writing goal. Write 2 books this year, and maybe spend some time revising the book that I wrote for last year's NaNoWriMo. So the first book will be written in the first 6 months, and then I'll probably put that one on hold, get ready for my book for NaNoWriMo, and then write it in November, the second book. So that by the end of the year, I have 2 books written. And what I'm hoping to do, because December 1st, or around December, is usually when graduate school applications are due. And I'm going to look for some school. I don't know if I'm going to apply to NYU again, because that's a different type of writing. That I need to write a movie for that application, not a book. And I think I'm going to try to find programs that are more geared towards writing book. I like writing movies, but honestly, even without a degree, anybody can write a book. Anybody can write a movie. Anybody can write a book, really. I don't really need my master's. I just want it. Anybody can write anything and get it sold. Like, I can write a movie today and get it sold. I could edit and revise the movie that I wrote for my first application, which I applied at the end of 2018. The end of 2018, when I wrote The Toy Maker. I could fix that up, clean it up some bit, and submit that. And maybe sell it. You never know. So I don't really feel like I need a degree in screenwriting, but I really want to spend more time in a rigid program working on writing books and the technicalities of it. I still have a lot of work to do in terms of grammar and mechanics and story structure. To make me feel proficient. I also want a master's as well, because after I publish a few books, I have a very long-term goal of getting to the point where I feel comfortable applying to, do some writing classes and teach them. But I have a very long way to go. That probably won't happen for at least 5 or 6 years. Maybe not even that soon, actually, because I have a long way to go. And I want to be published and get to the point where I can teach some writing classes. Maybe even back at my alma mater of Emory University to teach some creative writing classes at the creative writing department. But yeah, I think you need a master's for that. So I want to get my master's for that reason too. And to show that I, have some legitimacy in the field. I think with a bachelor's, anybody can get a bachelor's in creative writing. I'm proud of it, yes, but it's not necessarily that much of a barrier of talent. You could do just enough to get by and get a creative writing. Like, if you get accepted into college, like, there are enough people who are that smart in the world to accomplish that, but fewer people can get their masters. It is what it is. I personally think that all undergrad should be free, and that the barrier of entry should be lower, and that more people deserve to go to college and are smart enough to do so. But there's just like a higher tier of knowledge if you're able to get a master's. You kind of work at a more, and this is what I'm learning from interacting with my wife, who is in a graduate program. You work at a much more rigorous pace, and you go through the ringer a little bit more, and there's a lot more demand of you. A lot of times in my undergraduate career, to get my creative writing degree, I wrote that stuff the night before class. I would skim the reading sometimes just to make sure I had stuff to turn in. I did fairly well, but you can't really rush at that kind of stuff in graduate school. You have to put in the time and the work and the energy, and by the end of it, it means much more. It would mean much more to me, where I am at this stage in my life, to put in that work to gain that honor of getting my master's. So that's one of the why that's one of the reasons why I want to do it. So that's the writing goals. I spent so much time. Jesus, Lord in heaven, it is 44 minutes long, and I barely scratched the surface of all the crap I want to talk about tonight. I let my phone die, and I haven't even looked at the next topic in a while. I haven't even talked about the goals for the actual podcast. I'm spending all the time talking about writing, but I haven't even talked about the dang on podcast yet. So this might actually just be an hour-long episode, a minimum. Okay, so that's the writing goals. To summarize, that's 2 books by the end of the year, 1 book written in NaNoWriMo, and the 3rd book is a book I wrote in 2019. I keep saying 2018 because 2018 feels like last year. Gosh, dang it. But by the end of 2020, I want to have 3 first drafts at least. We'll give it 2 and a possible of a finished draft. Two manuscripts, 2 first drafts, and a possible completed draft. We'll see. Reading goals. I'll knock these ones out really quick. I plan to read somewhere between 40 and 50 pages a day. And by the end of the year, something like a soft goal of 24 books. That's very easy. That's 2 books a month. If I'm reading on the trains to and from work, I should be able to do that. Hell, maybe even by the end of the summer, I could probably do that. Just reading on the trains alone. I have a word count, but it's hard to kind of measure the word count. Right now, I'm reading a lot of stuff. And this is some stuff I want to tell you what I'm reading about because it's going to come down the docket by the end of the summer at least, but realistically a little bit sooner than that. I want to have a few of these series finished and talked about on the podcast. Maybe not all the series finished, because I don't know how long some of these series are. Particularly the book I'm reading right now, I just started today, is Dune by, what's his name? Grace, who wrote Dune?
Frank Herbert.
Frank Herbert. Grace is behind the green screen working on art stuffs. Dune is a few books, but I'm gonna read a bunch of books in the Dune series. The Witcher is popular on Netflix, and I love the show. I love the game, so and I read the first book, and I kind of picked up some things from the second book. I didn't read it all the way through. I kind of got lazy while reading it, but I want to reread the first book and kind of get all the way into the Witcher series. My plan with the Witcher series is to read the books and just be a little bit ahead of the show. So I'll find out what season 2 is going to do, and then read the books to outpace the show, and then keep reading them that way. To my understanding, the first 2 books are collections of short stories. Well, I know that to be true, at the very least for the first book, The Last Wish. And then after that, the books become more novelizations. But we'll see. I don't know the accuracy of that. I'm going to start reading the Scythe series in a few weeks. Once I finish the first book of Dune, I'm going to read the first book of Dune. Then I'm going to finish while reading the first book of Dune, I'm going to be listening to the first Witcher on audiobook. I found it on YouTube. It's like 10 hours long, so I can knock it out. I can actually finish that this week at work. No cap. I like no cap. That's what the youth is saying. It means not a lie. Cap means to lie. So if you capping, you lying. I learned stuff on the internet. So those are the books I'm reading. Dune, the Scythe series, if I didn't say that already. I'm gonna finish some of the stuff that I started last year. So I read this middle grade book called Ambassador. It's a part of a, what do you call 2 books? Not a trilogy, but a duology. I think it's called a duology. So it's part 1 and part 2. So I'm gonna read the part 2. That book will take me like a couple afternoons to finish because it's a middle school book that's like 200 pages and it was super quick to read the first time. I don't actually know how big the sequel is, but I want to finish that story because I really liked it. It's a middle school book, but the book that I wrote, mine, by the way, is a 7th grade audience in mind. So I have to. I want to read stuff in that mindset, and probably my target audience, as I write more and more, will be YA, young adult. It's just it's the stuff I'm interested in reading, even though I'm an OA, which is an old adult. I'm an OAA, which is an old ass adult. So I don't write books for OAAs. Maybe one day I will, because I read a lot of YAs and MGs, which is middle grade books. What else? So those are the books that I'm reading. Also, I kind of talked about this earlier. I want to read Watchmen too, so that on the podcast I'll have some specific episodes where I'm talking about books alone. And then the podcast goals: 1 episode a week. I'm really, really, really gonna start focusing on keeping these episodes to an hour long. Oh, my computer's getting notifications as I'm recording. Rude. So I'm going to try to make my schedule, at least for the next 3 or 4 months for the podcast and have really cool themes for each episode so I don't go over. As we kind of develop the structure for the videos and how I want the episodes to go and what I want them to be, because I want the podcast to be okay. So I want the podcast to be a really casual listen. I want you to come to the podcast while you're commuting to work, while you're at work. If you want to just have me in your ear, you don't have to watch the video component. And I'm just gonna kind of talk about the stuff that's popular during the week. The podcast might be trailer reactions, a few quick thoughts of movies and how I'm breaking them down as heroes. That's the podcast. That's the podcast. In companion with the podcast, I'm going to build out all of my other social media. Yeah, I want to diversify everything. So the podcast will be on YouTube and on where you ever listen to podcasts. I'm going to do my movie reviews proper are going to become like YouTube videos. So if you listen to the podcast on YouTube, you'll just be able to, there'll be a playlist for my movie reviews. I plan to do a lot of them, 2 or 3 a week, just because they don't take a lot of energy to do. And I see a lot of movies. I just got to make myself see more movies. It's going to be a lot to balance with seeing movies, recording the movie reviews. But recording the movies is just me sitting here talking to you for 8 minutes. That's all it is for a movie review. I'm not going to do any cutting and stuff like that. Not at first. Put up this green screen takes 2 minutes. So I should be able to go see a movie, come home immediately from that movie, pull up the green screen, talk about that movie for 30 minutes, and not complain that I'm too tired to do it. And then post that video immediately that night, and then just give you guys quick movie reviews about what I think. And the reason I want to do that is because I really want to unlock the press rewards. I want to be sent stuff early. I need to get an audience to do that. So the movie reviews will be YouTube video movie reviews. The podcast will be really casual discussions on think pieces and thought processes and not thought processes, think pieces and thoughts that I have on stuff that's happening relevant to that week. And then my blog, I'm renaming the blog to the Heroically blog. Right now it's called Everywhere Heroes, but I want to have some brand consistency, and I'm really going to try to build up the Heroically brand. So Heroically the blog, whatever I do, so I'm going to spend my breaks at lunch working on my blog posts, actually. And I'm probably going to do 2 or 3 a week. That seems really ambitious right now. I might limit it to 1 post a week. But the blog is where I'm going to do my heroic analyses. If you've ever read my blog before, right now it's called Everywhere Heroes. It's where I take heroes from stories and stuff, and I put them in the hero's journey. Now, I've done that on the podcast in the past, but I really like breaking that down in a written format. And I also, this year, I want to flex my writing muscles again more. I stopped writing when I started doing the podcast. I stopped blogging when I stopped doing the podcast. So I might come on here and casually talk about heroic characters and break them down like I've done in the past. But for the deep analysis, the actual essays, if you're interested in those, that's going to be on the blog. And I'll post links to so let's take Black Widow. Black Widow is coming out this summer, I believe. How it might work, it might go something like this. The episode that week for the podcast, I might spend 30 minutes talking about female characters or like women characters in literature as heroes, right? A casual discussion. I might have my wife join me on that episode. We'll talk about their depiction and characters. And because we just saw Black Widow will be the focus of that conversation. So I'll use Black Widow and maybe dip into like Captain Marvel and some other characters like that as sort of the examples that I'm giving as evidence to my claims and stuff that I'm bringing up in the podcast. But for a specific character analysis where I go into more depth of Black Widow, you'll have to go to the blog. And for my opinions specifically about the movie Black Widow, where I talk about Black Widow, some of the other characters in the movie, you'll have to watch the Black Widow YouTube video. And it might be something like I do an hour of the podcast, and 10 minutes in the podcast is the movie review, and then I pluck that 10 minutes out and call it a YouTube movie review. We'll see how that goes. Because I'm going to kind of play around with the timing and stuff of it. Another thing that I'm going to do, in addition to movie reviews, I'm going to do video game reviews and book reviews. Those will be a lot fewer in number, just because I can watch a movie faster than I can complete a whole video game, and I could what was I saying? Yeah, I could basically watch a movie faster than I could do any of that other stuff. I could watch a movie faster than I could read a book. But so, for example, once I finish Dune, I'll do a book review on YouTube of me talking about my ideas of Dune. It can get really complicated with breaking down books on the blog, just because I can kind of get bogged down with some of the nuance. Books is there's a lot of stuff to cover in books, and realistically, if I were to read one book a month, I could spend that whole month breaking down story structure and character analyses of characters from the book, especially Dune. Dune is like 800 freaking pages. So I'm only on chapter 3. I'm about to start chapter 4 actually. And I could already get a week's worth of content. We're making a new video every day, a new blog post every day, just on the characters alone and where I think they're gonna go. So books are so much more rich in material than movies. That's not to say I can't do that for movies. It would just be a lot harder to do that for movies. So that's the blog, that's the podcast, and that's the YouTube channel. And then I'm going to try to do. What I'm probably gonna do is I'm gonna link my Twitter and my Facebook and my Instagram. Somehow I'm trying to link it and do like one Instagram post every day, just a general, hey, have you guys seen this video? Hey, I just left the movies, like little casual things just to kind of help build the audience in those platforms as well. I might do like little snapshot after movie, like I might be leaving the theater and do like a 1 minute Instagram video, giving you my quick thoughts and letting you know that I'm going home to record the full YouTube video. That could be cool. I might tweet my thoughts about movies, and I'm gonna start my Twitter. I'm gonna kind of gear towards all of my fandoms. I so don't use Twitter enough. I use Twitter for like my personal fandoms, but those don't kind of come into what I talk about. Like I use Twitter a lot for like my singing competitions and my Gordon Ramsay shows, which I probably still will do, of course. But I'll probably start using Twitter a little bit more to follow things like when movies and stuff come out, or what actors are saying about their roles or upcoming stuff like that, like box office stuff, you know. Um, so that's that. My phone has gone to sleep again. It really wants to sleep. It doesn't like being on with me not using it. So those are kind of the goals for the year: to build the brand of Heroically, get some music for the channel, to make all of my podcasts have this visual component. This is a big goal that I'm already accomplishing it by being in front of the green screen. To keep my episodes to be about an hour. Unfortunately, we are almost out of time. I got 4 minutes left, so I'm kind of cramming in here at the end. Writing the books. One more big thing with writing. In addition to writing the books and blogging might kind of eat into this a little bit, so I might have to like just limit myself to one blog a week. I want to work on some short stories, and the reason I want to do some short stories as well is because I want to get some short stories submitted to some magazines, try to earn some monies, try to sell some stories, and I have some short story ideas in my head that I want to put onto the page. I haven't written a short story. Well, I wrote one last year, but it was it was I wrote it really quickly, and it's not really that bad. I probably redrafted a little bit. It was about a man who goes onto a train. Some creepy things happen, and he's alone on the train with like someone who he thinks is a homeless man. Like with this, if you ever been on a train in New York with a homeless person, you know how they kind of sleep on the train carts. But the train breaks down in the middle of a tunnel. It's only him and this homeless man on the train, and he goes and they're on the train for a very long time. So he goes to talk to the homeless man, and he finds out that the homeless man. Actually, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you. Read the short story when it's published. Haha. Only my wife knows what happens. Grace, you remember what happens?
No.
Oh, Grace doesn't remember, so I have to read it to find out. But I wrote that story, and it was really bad, so I stopped writing it. I got it's probably like 5 pages long. So it's not really a full short story proper, but I'll probably turn it into one. Oh God, if I still have it. It's on my desktop at work. I need to email it to myself. So those are the goals. This is 2020. We're back on Heroically. Some big things happening this year. It's only the 5th of January. Those are all my professional goals, and I need to take more water. I haven't had this My voice gets really dry. It's a really dusty room. I gotta get used to seeing myself on the camera. But you guys, I'll get used to it. I'll have more of a persona. So yeah, if you came back, if you listened to every episode last year, I really appreciate you being back. Some good things coming in store this year. Last year I did something like 25 episodes for season one, but I started in February. I missed a lot of weeks, so the rule for me for 2020, or not the rule, but the goal for me for 2020 is to try to have some consistency, to come up with goals and actually fight to accomplish them. So that by the end of this year, I can say that I applied to grad school, I finished the books that I wanted to finish, and I successfully podcasted and grew an audience. Oh, I got 10 seconds left. It'll be a little longer than an hour. I'm not going to stop it right at the hour mark unless my computer does. Are you going to stop an hour? It kept going. Nice. So unlike Anchor, which I think like stops me, if I remember correctly, it's been a while. Numbers goals. I want to get by the end of the year 50 to 100 patrons on my Patreon. Additionally, I want to try to work towards getting 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. 2020 is a year for getting 1,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. That is the goal. 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, 100 patrons. I don't really care about the Facebook numbers or the Instagram numbers, but hopefully those numbers grow. And I'll kind of, because I'm new to kind of building those platforms, what I'm going to do at the end of this year, I'll see where everything is across the board. I'll see what's working. Maybe Facebook is a little bit more popular than Instagram, or maybe Twitter. I have more followers than I have on Instagram. I need to focus my energy on the thing that's working and not the thing that's taking up unnecessary time, which I suspect already might be Facebook. Facebook might be, it might just be Instagram and Twitter out here in these cold-hearted, cutting Facebook ass streets, yo. The villain of the week, as I'm wrapping up, is Donald stupid ass Trump. He was impeached a few weeks ago. We hate him. We hate him. If you don't hate Trump, that's fine. You are still welcome here on the podcast and on my YouTube channel. We're going into 2020 with love and positivity. But I fucking hate Trump, so if that turns you off of me, then you hate to see it. You hate to see it. But he's the villain of the week. I'm doing a lot of research on the Iran thing that happened. He did the airstrike on that guy. So I'm learning people's names. I'm learning the potential nuances of World War III, a nuclear apocalypse, and Grace and I are gonna be buying a whole bunch of water and milk because he needs some milk. No, a lot of canned foods though. We don't have a cellar or anything here, so we're not really prepared for the apocalypse. Gotta try to find the humor in like the darkest shit ever. But I don't want to be drafted, you guys. I'm a fat guy who's almost 30. At some point, I'll give you guys some weight loss updates because, this year I'm also vegetarian. Neither here nor there. Don't really worry about that too much. That's just my personal thing. I'm not starting off the year trying to be a healthy vegetarian, if that makes sense. I'm just trying to succeed as a vegetarian. I want to introduce more vegetables into my diet. Pesco vegetarian, to be completely honest, to be completely clear and transparent, which means I'm eating seafood and vegetables, right? Cutting out a lot of like the pork and stuff is really bad for my mood and my vibes and my mojo and my energy. And also it's really bad for the environment, particularly the environment. Pork and beef and stuff like that. What I might end up doing is after this year, I might reintroduce poultry and poultry only. But I want to try to make it this year by just eating a pesco vegetarian diet. I want to start snacking. I want to start eating a little bit healthier. And this first month is just survive as a vegetarian. And then in February, I'm gonna try to change one more habit. February might be the month where I try to stop drinking soda. I've already shifted to drinking my soda in forms of zero. I had an Orange Crush the other day, and I had way too much Orange Crush, and it wasn't zero soda, a zero like Coke Zero or whatever. So I think maybe February I'll go off soda altogether, right? Then in March, I might go off candy because I still eat candy all the time and snacky cakes and stuff. And as a vegetarian, I found this. I've been a vegetarian for 5 days, and I cheated once with ordering a pizza, but it was just a cheese pizza, and I only got one pizza, some cheese sticks with it, but it wasn't really that bad a cheat. And honestly, I've been eating my vegetables every day. I've been eating the fruit every day. I've been drinking as much water as I can. Although the past 3 days, I have not had as much water. Like I've been working on this bottle since this morning, and it's only 32 ounces. I'm supposed to have 3 of these a day, so I need to drink a lot more. I'll probably just chug this, make dinner, and then have another one with dinner, so I can finish the day with two. I'm probably gonna pee a lot tonight. Because that's information that you wanted to know as I'm wrapping up the episode. So yeah, that was the villain. That was the villain of the week, because his actions maybe have started the next World War, but we'll see. Just please God, don't draft me. I'll probably just be having to cook for soldiers in the military, heroically, right? What else am I forgetting? Oh, the hero of the week. I didn't really think about the hero of the week, and I'm gonna do this every week. I'm ending the episodes, rain or shine, villain of the week, hero of the week. Even if the hero of the week is just me sitting here like rambling on who I think is the hero of the week. Who do I think is the hero of the week? Better yet, who is the hero of 2019? Oh, who is so? All right, so Donald Trump not only is the villain of the week, he's the villain of 2019. That is my assessment. He is the villain of 2019. And just by doing that, I know what next week's episode of the podcast is going to be. Next week's episode of the podcast, I'm going to do some top 10 lists. I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite movies of 2019, my top 10 least favorite movies of 2019. I haven't seen nearly everything that I want to see, so my top list is going to be absolute shit because I haven't seen a lot. But yeah, who did I say is my hero of 2019? I don't know. Leave a comment below. I'm actually going to end it by just thinking about who my hero is for 2019. No, I know. My hero for 2019 is Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda saves the year. Baby Yoda saves the year. Baby Yoda saves the year. He's so fucking cute, you guys. All right, I'm going to get on out of here before I start spending the next hour talking about Baby Yoda memes. Jesus. Baby Yoda saves the year. Toss a coin to your Baby Yoda. All right, good night, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. I forgot my outro. What is my outro? I forgot the order. It's been 2 or 3 months since I've done this. I remember. I'm trying to remember the order. Thank you. My wife is helping me from behind the green screen. It starts, I love you, and I hope you love me. I had fun. Damn it, I fudged it. Fun is where we end it. We start with love and we end with fun. I love you. I hope you love me. I learned something. I hope you learned something too. And I had a fucking fun time. I hope you had fun too. Let me know how you think about the sound quality, the visual quality. Appreciate you. Happy New Year.